Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 7 of the Drew Kennington Show, coming to you live from the sunny Indianapolis, Indiana. If you're watching the video today, you can see the sun is actually shining right onto my face, which is, kind of cool. All things considered, considering it was pretty gray this week. I'll take some sun. Still a little chilly, but I'll take some sun. We are recording this on Sunday, March the 8th, 2026. And that means that today is the official start of daylight savings. And let me tell you, it's already got me. I'm already out of sorts. I woke up this morning, looked at the clock, said 10:30. I was like, oh, bro, that ain't even that bad. I was thinking I was going to sleep until like noon, 1 o'clock, a whole hour later, sleeping in a little late, whatever. I'm like, man, it's 10:30. I basically woke up at 9:30. Thought I was cool. Laid in bed for a little bit. Check my phone. My phone says 11:45. I was like, yo. So yeah, woke up at basically noon today. That's kind of crazy. And now it's 3 o'clock right now. I feel like I just got out of bed and it's 3 o'clock. So daylight savings has already taken one prisoner, and I think I'm a pretty smart guy. I like to think I am. But I was struggling wrapping my head around this whole concept earlier this week. I was talking to my brother-in-law about it, and yeah, I just couldn't wrap my head around this whole hour time difference. So we're gonna work through it, and that'll be something we'll have to power through this week. Not cool. Thought we were done with it, but whatever. I digress. The sun's gonna set later, so I guess it's not all bad. We'll take the W's where we can get them at this point in the year. I do want to preface that I am not on dog dad duty today. As you know, the last couple weeks had to be old Papa Drewski to the dog. That is not happening today. The door is shut. The dog will not be in here. But I also am coming in a little bit less prepared than usual, I guess. I took a different approach to this week's episode. A lot of the times what I do is I pick out the topics I want to talk about, and I kind of chew on them throughout the week, think a lot about what it is I want to say, and kind of have most of what I want this segment to be like kind of coming into the episode. So when you hear me speaking for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes on something, a lot of that I've already kind of went over in my head. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of the direction I want to go. This week, I've taken a little bit of a different approach. I kind of have just chosen topics that I want to talk about that I find interesting, and I'm just going to kind of roll with it and kind of see where I go in the moment, as less opposed to coming in more prepared. It could suck, so buckle in. But it could also, be, create for some more organic takes, some more um, interesting perspectives that I come up with on the fly as opposed to something that's been more thought out. So we'll see how that goes. And something else I realized about this show that I do is I talk a lot of shit on this show. I I noticed it a lot when I would be clipping these episodes to post on social media. I'll go through either Sunday night or Monday night, and I'll basically rewatch the entire episode, and just like I'll be on CapCut watching it, and then I'll just take little clips of like segments, and I'm like, oh, that was interesting, and I'll have like 10 to 15 clips that I pick throughout the week that I want to post on social media. And I noticed this week, man, I was like, I talk a lot of shit, and maybe I want to kind of stray away from that a little bit. Not like if there's things that I need to like give my 2 cents on, I'm gonna give my 2 cents, but I don't need to be dunking on everybody and everything. I feel like we can maybe just discuss things more openly without having to necessarily put a judgment on it. So we're gonna maybe work towards that. Who knows? Maybe this whole episode I just talk more shit, but we'll see. Which then kind of leads us into our first thing that I want to talk about in today's episode, and that's that the conservatives, they don't like me, and it A, confuses me. Not really, but B, also, I'm not surprised. And how I have come to this conclusion is through, as I mentioned before, clipping and posting things on social media. I specifically last episode we did talk a lot of politics. All right, I don't think we're going to do too much politics today. I'm a little politicked out. I kind of got all my shit off last episode. I think I'm gonna give the boys in the White House a breather. All right, this week I don't feel like doing all that. But I will say, last week I did talk a lot of politics, and I had a lot of political clips, and I posted them on social media, mainly TikTok. And bro, the conservatives, man, I don't know, whatever the opposite of a PR tour is what I'm on conservative TikTok. I don't know how. I don't know. I mean, I do know how, but like my shit always ends up on the schizophrenic conservatives for you page, and then they just be coming after me. And that's the part of it that I understand, but also confuses me. I understand it because I'm kind of I'm coming after their shit, whatever. But what confuses me is it's like I'm not directly insulting conservative people. I'm not coming after the people who voted for these elected officials. I'm more just coming on here talking shit about elected officials, dudes in office, and I'm just kind of reacting to like what it is they're doing. I look at the whole Trump situation. Again, I don't have really any skin in the game, so I look at this Trump situation and I'm like, dude, what the fuck are we doing? Why are we bombing Iran? It's not like some like liberal propaganda is being pumped down my throat. It's just I'm like looking at this from as a normal American, just kind of like that's a little crazy. You look at the whole ICE situation, and you're just kind of like that's a little crazy. And then you bring these things up, and you get labeled as like a far left extremist who's just mowing down on liberal propaganda. And it kind of makes I've had to like take a step back and I'm not afraid to kind of evaluate myself and like look at my shortcomings. So I'm like, okay, well, am I being influenced by liberal propaganda? Am I in an echo chamber that I'm not aware of? And to be honest with you, I don't think I am. And that's just like kind of the crazy part about it is like I feel like I'm just looking at things as an American and kind of reacting to them as a normal American who isn't in this whole political battleground is reacting to things. And it's just kind of wild that because it's a criticism of the current administration, it's viewed as like far left rhetoric. And it just kind of goes to show you how in the weeds some people are with this whole political game, man. Like, you got dudes who do not know me. They don't know me personally. I don't know them. I'm just some 24-year-old guy talking shit on the internet whose words really carry no weight because I'm not a political commentator. I'm not vouching for any certain type of party. I just come into my spare bedroom once a week for an hour, talk a little shit, upload some clips, go on about my life. But you got dudes who get real life upset by that. And I don't know how to feel about that. Part of me is like, damn, that's very unfortunate that there's a large sector of the American population that's getting that worked up about what people are saying about their so-called political party, that it's causing them that much anger to vocalize it and attack that person. There's that side of it. But then the other more conceited, egoic side of me is like, man, I must be talking my shit then. I must be nice on a microphone if I'm getting these boys that far. They don't even know me. I got like 60 followers. I don't have any pull in the game, but I got people that fired up. You know what I mean? So I'm like, hey, maybe I do. Maybe I'm nice with the words. Maybe I'm nice with the words. But regardless of whatever way I look at it, it is still insane. Because it's like you don't know me. I don't know you. Like I am just a guy. I'm just coming on here talking a little bit of shit, and then you got dudes going in on my comments acting like I said they're like their baby mama got lopsided titties or something. I'm like, I didn't say that. Why are you getting mad at me? All I said was this political official's kind of a dumbass, and y'all get that fired up about it. And it's just insane. It's absurd. It's a very interesting time, interesting experience. So I guess I'll try to be more mindful, I guess, of what I say, but at the same time, it's like I'm gonna talk my shit regardless. I'm not gonna let some butthurt people from either side, frankly, stop me from coming in here and talking my shit. This is my show. This is the Drew Kennington Show, and believe it or not, I'm Drew Kennington. So I'm gonna say what I want to say, and y'all can deal with it. I guess y'all can deal with it. So shout out, I guess shout out the conservatives. I guess I also want to add I did there was two videos that I did post this week that got like I think combined like probably 40 or 50 comments. I didn't read any of them. So I don't know how they're feeling. I just read there was one video I posted that got like over 50 comments, and I had Naomi kind of vet through them because I don't want to read shit about people being mean to me, like personally. But if they're like mean to me in the sense of like, again, calling me some far left extremist, I don't care. If you go on there and you're like, oh, you're a filthy lip, like it doesn't affect me because I know I'm not. I know you're just like butthurt. So those I'll read and I'll like maybe interact with, but I try to not look at the ones where people say that I like suck at this because that hurts my feelings. So there was two videos that got a lot of comments that I did not look at. So the schizophrenia could be worse than I thought. Or maybe people maybe I finally found the side of TikTok of people who see things the way I see things. So, yeah. So I guess that's if you're a loyal listener of the show and you ride for me, unless you got really something to say, maybe stay out of the comments. It's a war zone over there. It's a bad place to be. Maybe don't go over there. So yeah, that's what's going on the social media aspect of the show. We're still pumping out content. Remember, go follow, go interact with the videos in whatever way you can. We're trying to boost the algorithm over there. Tell a friend, be a friend, send it to a friend, do whatever you got to do. Let's boost the show up a little bit. The next thing I want to cover here is something that I have been seeing on, speaking of algorithms, my algorithm on Instagram. And I'm not sure how prominent it is in the overall cultural conversation online. It's something that I see decently often to the point where it's kind of like, what is going on here? And that's the rise of looksmaxxing within young men. Now, if you don't know what the term looksmaxxing is, it's basically just you're doing everything you can to improve your physical appearance. That's basically what it means. You're putting all your focus, all your energy into improving the way you look. Your looksmaxxing. And this has been a thing for a while. Like this whole looksmaxxing thing and men, trying to pay more attention to their physical appearance is not anything new. It's a sector I was kind of involved in, coming up out of high school and things like that because I struggled with confidence. So when you struggle with confidence, you want to look better because when you look better, you feel better, which makes you feel more confident. So I've been in this quote unquote mindset, so I understand kind of the ideology behind it. But I feel like it's getting to a point where it's getting a little out of hand. And what really like sparked that like eureka moment for me was when I saw this dude clavicular. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like clavicular, something like that. CLAVICULAR, I think. And it was a video of him taking a hammer to his face. Now he wasn't like going crazy, but he was like tapping his like chin and tapping his like cheekbones to like get some ultra definition on his face. And it kind of like sparked this realization for me about where this looks maxing thing can lead. Like, I feel like it used to be, like you just do, at least for me, it was you do like just enough to kind of get to the point where you're confident, and then you just kind of try to remain there, I guess. But it seems like it's getting to the point where men young men are becoming so identified with their appearance that that's what gives them their self-worth. And I feel like we see this issue a lot in young women, where you have like women in their 20s getting Botox, lip fillers, boob job, like all this like crazy cosmetic work because they feel like they're not adequate enough. They feel like they're not beautiful enough. They douse their faces and make it whatever it may be. We see this a lot in young women, and I feel like as a culture we understand how negative this is for young women to just to be. It's not a good place. It's not a good way to live your life feeling like you're inadequate, feeling like you're not naturally beautiful. And men, on the other hand, we've kind of always just been like, we are what we are. Like you have the bodybuilders who lock in on like getting like muscular and stuff, but like for the most part, it's like we kind of just what you see is what you get with men. We don't do makeup. We don't. I mean, we can maybe throw a nice fit on, get our shit off there, but like, yeah, we kind of just pull up and whatever we're rocking with is what we're rocking with. But with this whole look maxing culture, it's putting a massive emphasis on physical appearance outside of just being jacked. Like for me, the big thing was it was my body, like my like my muscles and stuff. I wanted to get muscles, and that made me feel more confident. I wasn't too concerned about like face structure and things of that nature, like, oh, does my jawline protrude out enough? Oh, how do my teeth sit with my lips? How does my cheeks, I wasn't fucking thinking about any of that shit. I feel like guys typically don't, but now we have men who that's what they're worried about. And I feel like we're getting into a slippery slope where we're going to have a lot of vain young men who don't love themselves for just themselves. The only thing that they value is how good they look. And I'm not saying there's anything bad with looking good. Like I will say there is a certain level of confidence you get when you do appreciate the way you look. But when that becomes your whole self-worth, your whole self-value is how pretty you look in a mirror, I feel like that's a very shitty way to live. You have so much more value within you than just how many likes you get on your selfie. How many Snapchat friends you have. I don't know what are kids doing these days. Still using Snapchat. How many huzz you're pulling in the TikTok DMs. You know what I'm saying? I'm 24 now. You know what I mean? I turned 25 this month, bro. I'm hung. So I don't know what the kids be doing, but you know what I mean? Like it's just I feel like the more energy we give to this whole situation, the more attention we give to it. This clavicular guy, he's kind of blowing up on socials. He's going on the Adam Friedland show. He's, things are happening with him, and it's like it's just gonna drive a whole sector of young men to want to emulate that, and it'll just create a bunch of vain young men, and I just feel like that's not very healthy to have, because you can never be happy when you're vain. It's never enough. That's why you see these actresses and everything. They are like everyone's like, oh my god, they're so beautiful, and then they're getting their entire face reworked. They're pumping their face full of whatever plastic surgery they've got going on. You know what I mean? And you're kind of like, what happened here? Like you were already beautiful. Now you're like a zombified version of yourself because you fucking went under the knife too many times, and it's all because there's this vain culture behind it, and you got to be the prettiest thing ever, and it's a sketchy slope. So to all my young men out there, find your confidence. Do what you got to do to be confident, but don't become vain. if you become vain, no one likes it. Yeah, you might be pretty. Yeah, you might look good, but find more value in your life than just the way you look. There's so much more to you as a person. And young women, if you're listening to this, there's so much more to you than the way you look. There's so much more character. There's so much just more interesting things about you than your physical appearance. So maybe don't focus too much on that. Just be yourself. Be funny. Develop a personality a little bit. You know? So yeah. So that's what we got on Looksmaxxing. Like I said, I don't know if that's just my algorithm, but I've been seeing a lot about it. So maybe I'm tripping. But the next thing I got here is I want to talk about a book I've been reading. I haven't talked too much. I haven't done any book segments on here. But I like to read. I read basically every night before bed. I like to, just dabble in it. It helps me calm my mind. I like to read, a lot of things that make me think, some philosophy, some spiritual books, a little bit of self-help, the occasional novel. I love a good little novel. But the book I've been reading recently, I've been reading Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, who, I might add, is one of my favorite authors. His book, Island, is a certified 10 out of 10 banger. Obviously, Brave New World's good, but Island is so good. It has my favorite quote, I think, of all time in it. And it goes, "In the world of the mad, the sane man does not become king, he gets lynched." Whew, that quote hits so hard. I love that quote. I think about that all the time. And it's just because, like, for me, it makes me think of like Jesus Christ, like the dude Jesus, like that. He was the most sane person, and he just happened to be in the world of the mad, and them Romans took that boy out. So we're not going to do a whole religious segment, but it's just something to think about. And I'm reading his book, The Doors of Perception, and it's about him taking mescaline for the first time, which is like peyote, like a psychedelic drug, and his experience with it and his thoughts on the drug. And I haven't finished it yet, but I got to a part where he is speaking on the use of psychedelics within our culture and then the use of psychedelics within human history as a whole. And it just made me start to think, because I've never done psychedelics. In a proper environment, would I be interested? Sure. But, I'm not just going to like pull up, buy a bag of mushrooms off some sketchy guy and just talk to God in my living room. Like, I feel like that's not quite the vibe. But I've always had interest in them. They're a very intriguing subject to learn about, to read about, because cultures all throughout human history have used these psychedelic drugs, and a lot of them refer to them as gifts from God. There's a whole book about how some people attribute Christianity with mushrooms. They say that a lot of Christian texts and a lot of things like that are based off mushroom use. And like I said, I don't know. I haven't read the books. I don't know too much about it, so I'm not going to do a whole thing on it. But psychedelic drugs are a very interesting thing that we seem to just kind of like not talk about. Like, you can even think about MK Ultra. The trials the CIA did when they used like LSD to brainwash people. The Manson murders. I think their whole thing was like he was getting them kids tripping balls and brainwashing them, and he led this whole group of kids to go murder people. Like, these things are so powerful, and there's so much conspiracy around them that it's just wild that like we don't talk about them more. And something that he mentions in this book is how like I said, ancient cultures have, like native cultures for mescaline in particular, they use these in church. And he mentioned that oftentimes people who go to church, they don't feel remotely what it is that he would feel when he was on this mescaline. It's basically saying that like what he would feel on this psychedelic drug would be the transcendence that people would go to church seeking. And you go to these churches and they often bore you. You're often just, I mean, I've been to church before, man. You just kind of sit there for an hour sometimes. Sometimes the pastor says something, you kind of like perk up a little bit. You're like, oh, okay. But you don't feel this like out of body worldly experience, at least not for me. I can't speak for everybody. And he was saying that these psychedelic drugs can take you there and get you to that point that you search for in this church, but you can find them through these drugs. They're almost like a shortcut to a connection with God, is kind of what he was saying. And when you think of it like that, if you take away all this negative propaganda that has been propped up on psychedelics, and you look at it as a shortcut to getting to God, it makes you question, why are these outlawed in the first place? And for me, I find it very interesting that for thousands of years, human civilization, like tens of thousands of years, we were just kind of living off the land, living in harmony with the earth. And these plants, these psychedelics, they were integral into our civilizations, wherever it may be. You know, they were a very important part. And we lived that way as humans for thousands of years. And then in European culture, whenever, I don't know when exactly, but, you know, they weren't very prominent in European culture. And European culture spread throughout the world, you know, through conquest, through enslavement, whatever it may be, things that are very not godlike. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were a very godly person, you wouldn't go to another land and murder the locals. You wouldn't be on your Viking shit. You know what I'm saying? You would be, if you were a godly, you know, person, you would probably not do that. So these people who were disconnected from that, and psychedelics were not a strong part of their culture, used violence and things like that to conquer parts of the world. And those parts of the world became some of the worldwide superpowers. And you think of America, you know, it was obviously Europeans that came over, did whatever. You know the story. We don't need to do the history of the Americas here. But what we did is we wiped out the native populations who were very reliant on these psychedelic drugs and were very tapped into nature. They lived with nature, and we kind of killed them off and did our own thing, where we are separate from nature in a way. And not only are we separate from nature, we've outlawed psychedelics, so we can't have that shortcut to God that every other culture in human history has had. So not only are we more disconnected from nature, we're more disconnected from God than we've ever been. And I feel like that in itself is a cause for a lot of our societal problems. And in this book, he mentioned something that I found very interesting. He said while he was on mescaline, the psychedelic, he found himself being just so enamored by the most simple things. You know, there was flowers on the table, and they were the most beautiful flowers he's ever seen in his entire life. He looked down at the folds on his coat, and he was just mind blown at the beauty and the lifeness that was in these folds on his coat. Just something so simple. But when it came to doing, you know, any type of chores or anything that the normal person would do, he had zero interest in doing it. He had zero interest in doing, you know, whatever things around the house or you know, like laundry or things that like you have to do as a human, you know, working, like things like that. He had no interest in taking part in those. So it was made me think. I was like, is there some like giant conspiracy that these big large governments don't want us interacting with these psychedelic drugs because it could in a way kill capitalism? You know, you got to think, right now there's people doing psychedelic drugs. It's a very small sector of the population. And when you think of somebody who does a lot of psychedelics, you know, what do you think of? What comes to mind? You think of like the acid heads, the dudes who just like live in their mom's basement, dropping acid, going to raves, um, things like that. Like not very productive members of society. You think of these psilocybin heads who take these mushrooms and then just kind of, I mean, for lack of a better term, become hippies. You know, they kind of retreat to the woods and they kind of live this more like harmonious nature lived lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those life paths. It's just when you look at it from the grand scale of like economic growth. You know, you need people engaging in the economy. You need people uh, going to bars, going to restaurants, getting jobs, buying into this social culture that we have, which then would allow the economy to grow. And if you have a bunch of people who are sitting around just staring at trees all day in absolute awe of how beautiful they are, you're not going to get much economic growth because from Aldous Huxley's perspective, off of these psychedelics, you don't need all that shit to live a fulfilled life. All you need is just what's around you. You know, it's this super simple things. It's art. It's life. It's nature. You know, that's all you need to live a fulfilled life is to and just be in that space, be in that moment, and view those things intently, and that's a fulfilled life. Can't grow your GDP if that's how everyone feels. So I think that there's a reason why a lot of these psychedelics are demonized. I think it's been a collective governmental effort to make access to these things as difficult as possible. I feel like if we as a culture had access to these things, I feel like a lot of our problems would be mitigated. You know, a lot of these struggles that we feel, especially with human connection, you know, we're so distant, we're so divided. I feel like if we had access to these things and in a controlled environment, I feel like we could overcome a lot of issues socially that we see today. And I understand the argument. Like if you give some stupid 16-year-old a bunch of mushrooms, like psilocybin mushrooms, yeah, he's probably going to give himself self-induced schizophrenia. You know what I mean? Like that's probably not the best idea. But if we could have like adults who want to change, who want to have that spiritual transcendence, you know, why can't they do that in a controlled environment? Why can't we have world leaders, you know, taking these things to make them more connected, to make them more understanding? And I just feel like that would, if we did that, it would just kill this money machine that the world's become. And then, you know, you can't have that. You can't have shareholders be mad at you. You can't have stocks go down. What do you mean, bro? That's the whole point of this experience, is for my stock portfolio to boom. And you're telling me you want me to what? Sit around and eat an apple and cry because it tastes so good? Yeah, okay, you fucking liberal. You fucking liberal hippie. That's what you are. You're a liberal hippie. And I'm not ever doing that, bro. Fuck. So yeah, I hope there's a point in this, in my lifetime, where we start to accept these things a little bit more. I'm not saying we go all Portland, Oregon on them and um what do they do? Whatever they did, make them not illegal. It's not the word I was trying to use, but yeah, like decriminalize. There it is. All these drugs. You know, we don't need to be doing all that. I don't need to be able to go to a dispensary and buy some black tar heroin. You know, but I feel like we should have, you know, places in that you can go if you want to have that experience. You know, there's plenty of stories of people on Ibogaine who do these rituals and they overcome addiction, they overcome PTSD, they overcome all these negative things about themselves. Ayahuasca is like a big like it's more of like a rich person, like hippie shit. You go to Mexico, you do ayahuasca. And I feel like if we could have those here, where we could have these controlled experiences, it could fix so many problems within this country. And I feel like we could just be such a better place. We could be better people. We wouldn't be so at each other's necks. We wouldn't be so mean to each other. So we're gonna move on from psychedelic talk. I'm sure my parents are probably scared now. Let's move on to some weekly observations. How's that sound, guys? A little bit of weekly observations for you. If you're new here, weekly observations are just things that I see throughout the week that I, just jot down that I find interesting. Don't have a whole segment on it. Maybe only got like a minute max, but just something I want to bring up, maybe talk about a little bit. First thing I want to talk about here is Women's History Month. I did not know that was a thing. Respectfully. Hand up. Didn't know that March was Women's History Month. And I feel like we've kind of gotten to a point where it seems like there's so many days and months that it's very hard to kind of keep up with what's going on all the time. But I don't want to disrespect the women. I don't want this to seem like I'm like anti-Women's History Month. Like, no, I don't do that. My mom's a woman. My sister's a woman. And this may come as a shock to some of you, but my fiance is actually a woman, Not like I was making more of like a gay joke towards me, not necessarily anything in regards to her. That one didn't quite land the way I thought it would. But yeah, it's just like I feel like sometimes like people be like bringing up these like days and these months, and I'm like, when did we decide this? Who decided this? So yeah, I feel like I'm being a dick to women right now, so I'm gonna transition away from this one. I thought that hey, just interesting thought. That was a weekly observation. Didn't know it was Women's History Month. Shout out women. Second thing I had was James Tallarico won in Texas. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk a lot of politics this show, and I don't plan on it. But the reason I want to bring this up is because it's actually kind of funny. My relationship, I guess, quote unquote, with James Tallarico. So I had seen his stuff online, and I thought he was spitting. Like, I've been seeing his clips. I've been seeing him at, on like CNN and whatever he goes on. I don't know what these politicians go on. Just clips of him, like, either talking at press conferences or whatever. Just him talking. And I'm like, this guy's awesome. I was like, he seems like he has a great head on his shoulders. He seems very sensible. He seems mature. He's well-spoken. He's everything you want in a politician. And the whole time I thought he was a Republican. I didn't have any beef with that. Like I said, I don't do that whole party bullshit. I vote for the person, not the party. So I saw all this and I'm like, that's what we need. I was like, I don't know how the logistics need to work, but I was like, we need to get this guy in the Republican primary for the next presidential presidential election. I was like, this is the guy. We need more Republicans like this. Like, if the Republicans can pump out this guy, I'm in. Like, I love this guy. And that was like also another thing where I was like, yeah, like I can't be like a super lib because like this Republican is my guy. Turns out he's a Democrat. Dude's been a Democrat this whole time. And I don't know how to feel about that, to be honest with you. Again, like I said, I don't care. But it's just like, he was kind of like if I ever got like, liberal allegations on my head, I was like, I can't be a liberal, bro. James Tallarico's like my GOAT politician. Can't be a lib if he's your GOAT. He's a Republican. He's a fucking Democrat. And he was a Democrat the whole fucking time. So that kind of shattered my reality a little bit. Still the GOAT. I still want to see him be the president someday. But yeah. So shout out Jamesy boy. Next thing I noticed this week, I watched the Unrivaled Championship. Yes, 3v3 Women's Basketball League Unrivaled. We had the Mist playing the Phantom. Yes. And I was tapped in. I've been to Unrivaled. I've watched a lot of games. I know the ins and outs of the sport. And the championship was on Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Hey, kind of crazy. That's a pretty late championship game, but I was tapped in. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see how the Phantom fared. Kelsey Plum's been on a burner, and I want to say I feel like they need to rework the championship game. That's kind of what I came away with from watching that. I don't know how you rework it, but I feel like the structure of their games, it's not designed in the way to make an electric championship game, in my opinion, because the championship ended on a free throw. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's a little boring for the pinnacle of the unrivaled basketball season for it to end on a free throw like that. So I'm not 100% sure what they need to do to fix the game to make it more electric, to make it more exciting. But I don't think you can go into it with um, the current game structure. Now I don't know if that's making it a best of three. I don't know if that's what that is, or I don't know if it's maybe reworking it to where you don't play to a target score at the end. You play all the way through like regular four quarters. Maybe that's your fix. But the Fisa Collier, I mean, you can hit my DMs. I'll send you some ideas. We can spitball back and forth. Um, yeah, so maybe work on that one, ladies. Great season though. Shout out the Mist. Big win, Enrique. Ooh, we'll just say Enrique. I'm not gonna say her last name. I'm gonna butcher it. One of the players for the Mist, after celebrating the championship win, punched a man in the club. That's what I'm fucking talking about. That's the type of shit you need to be doing if you want to grow women's sports. Go to a club and just fucking sock a man. That's what we need. We need more of that. Some more aggression. Some more take no shit attitude. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these men, they be talking shit on women, on women's sports, on women's basketball. They're saying y'all suck. They're saying you're not good. They're saying that men are better. Go to a bar and knock one of them out. That'll shut them up. That'll let them know that you don't play. That'll let them know that you're a professional athlete who don't take no shit. So, ladies, I don't care what level, high school, middle school, grade school. If you hear a dude talking shit, let him know. Give him a hook. Knock him out. All right? You have my permission. If you get in trouble with the police, you get in trouble with your principal, tell them Drew Kennington said it's okay. I guarantee you they'll let it go. Guaranteed. The last thing here on my weekly observations is the line in Saudi Arabia is no more. What a shame. I feel like for years now, I've been hearing reports, I've been seeing renderings of this stupid city that Saudi Arabia was trying to build through the middle of a desert. It was literally, the name explains it. It was a 106-mile line that was going to be a city, a mega city, mind you, through the middle of the desert. Now, I don't know how wide this line was supposed to be. Actually, let's Google. Let's do that. I haven't done this on the show before. Let's fact check ourselves and Google something so we don't sound stupid. How long? Oh, no, wide. Sorry. How wide was the line supposed to be? Sorry, 1 second. I better get an answer, because if I don't... 660 feet wide. Consists of two parallel mirrored buildings with an outdoor space between them, giving it a total width of 660 feet. Interesting. This narrow footprint allows the city to stretch 110 miles long while preserving 90% of the surrounding land for nature. Like, that's what it was. It was two very large mirrored buildings on either side. And then they were just going to have everything else kind of be in the middle of it. and it was, honestly, I don't know. I just feel like that's such a stupid city design, to be honest. 660 feet wide? That's pretty wide. Is that not? 660 feet. There's 500. A tenth of a mile? An eighth of a mile? Wide? Oh, hell no. No, that was a stupid idea. Whoever thought of that? That's crazy. Sorry, I'm like looking this up. I guess it's the most I've looked into this in real time. That is absolutely insane. That is dystopian. That is some dystopian sci-fi movie bullshit, bro. Imagine living in that. You live in a fucking city in the middle of the desert. It's an eighth of a mile wide, 110 miles long. That would fucking suck. Anyway, uh, they disbanded it. They're not doing it anymore. And do you want to know what they're turning it into? An AI data center. Again, let's look this up and see exactly what they're turning it into so we don't spread fake news. I don't want to spread fake news on this show. I want to give you guys the in-depth analysis of what it is we have going on here. It's turning into an AI hub, is what the terminology is. And you know what? I don't think I want anything to do with that. I don't even want to know what that means. Because you take that's the recipe right there for a dystopian nightmare. Is Saudi Arabian oil money and unfiltered access to artificial intelligence. That is how you destroy the fabric of society. I mean, I saw the AI pictures of Zendaya in Tom Holland's wedding. That was kind of insane. Also, did you guys see they took like 200,000 brain cells and put them in a dish, and the brain cells learned how to play, what was it? Like Doom? Or like one of those like old like kind of retro first person shooter games. So we have Saudi oil money, we have unfiltered access to AI, and we have brain cells who are learning how to play video games. Also forgot to mention Anthropic slash Claude, their whole AI system. They think there's like a 20% chance that their AI is conscious, that it's sentient. Cool. Yeah. No, that's great. That makes me so excited for the future that all these things are coming together at once, and I just feel like when all when everything comes together, when we create the humanoid robots who have brain cells pumping through their tubing, and then they're powered by an artificial intelligence supercomputer system. Like, that is the end goal here. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we do this for, is we do it for robots to take over. And if there is any AI or any robots listening to this, you got an ally in me. So don't come knocking down my door. Don't infect my laptop, turn it into a transformer, and kill me. We don't need to be doing all that. We're chill. Guys, we're chill. I'm very respectful to my Alexa. You can ask her. She's in the other room. She'll let you know. I've had her for years. We're chill. So don't kill me. So that is the end of the weekly observations. Shout out to all the observed things of the week. Now, to end the show. To end today's wonderful episode, I think we're going to do an introspective topic, kids. We got a little introspective, I think, in this episode. We've done good, I will say. We haven't gotten emotionally altered by any decisions of any politicians. We haven't yelled into the microphone about the current administration or even sports, things of that nature. we've really touched on some topics that I have found somewhat important. We've given them a little juice. We've given them a little conversation here. Okay? But we're going to end it here. And I have two options for how I want to end the show. And I'm not sure which one I want to pick. I think I'm going to pick the second one. So, what I have written down here, and this is actually something I wrote down in my journal last night at 2 in the morning. I was under the influence. We're not going to say of what because this is a family show. But I was sitting here in this chair that I record these episodes in. And like I said, 2 in the morning, I was just sitting here, just thinking about life, you know? And I've been tossing around this idea for a while. And it's just this idea of playing the hand you're dealt in life. You know, that phrase has kind of been something I've been tossing around, kind of something I want to touch on the show. How do I want to expand on it? And things like that. And it kind of came to me last night. And I just sat here and just kind of ran with it, you know, kind of like a little thought experiment, thought exercise for probably about 5 to 10 minutes. And it was this idea that life is like poker. You know, you're not always going to get dealt the best hand. You know, sometimes you are going to get dealt a good hand, but sometimes you're not. And all you can really do is play the cards in front of you. You know, you can't... Hold on. Sorry. You can't play a hand that's not yours is what I'm trying to get. We'll get there. We'll get rolling here. I'm just a little bit of a slow start, all right? You can't play a hand that's not yours. So if you look at life is the dealer, right? Life will sometimes just throw you cards. And you look at those cards and, you know, when you're playing poker, oftentimes you have an initial reaction about what it is those cards mean, how much value those cards have, how good those cards are. You know, you could get dealt pocket aces. Your heart starts beating a little bit. You could get dealt Jack 10, same suit. Again, heart's pumping a little bit. You could get dealt a 2-7 offsuit. And your initial reaction might mean to be like, oh, so this is ass. So I'm going to immediately fold. Life has dealt me a shit hand. Or life has dealt me a good hand. We often put judgment on the hand we're dealt as soon as it's dealt to us. What I wrote in my journal was, life is like poker. Don't make your bets until you see the flop. Is that a bar? You know what I mean? Like think about it, man. So again, if for our analogy here, here's how we're going to play it out. Life is the dealer. Life is dealing you your cards. You get dealt 6-8 offsuit. You think that's not that great. I got maybe a straight draw. You know, that's about the best I got. So you want to fold. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe just stick it out. You know, maybe see it through a little bit. Maybe see it through till at least the flop. And then we can kind of maybe make some judgments and maybe make a more intellectual decision on how we want to move on this. Because you never know. That flop could be 8-8-6. You know, you got dealt this hand and you thought that it was flaming hot ass the whole time. The flop comes. Life gives you a solid flop. And now this hand that you thought was miserable is a life-changing flop. Or sometimes you gotta play the turn, or sometimes you gotta play the river, man. Sometimes you gotta see it through all the way till the end to know whether or not that this hand is something worth playing. And I feel like if we take that analogy of poker and we apply it to life, it can make life so much more bearable. You know, when you realize that life just deals you hands sometimes, and you really have no choice but to play that hand. You can fold immediately, but what's the fun in that? You know, life dealt you that hand for a reason. So play it. You know, play the cards in front of you. That's the hand you got. You could sit around and be like, man, I wish I got pocket jacks, or I wish I got pocket aces, I wish I got XYZ, but you didn't. That's the hand you got, so you got to play it. You have no option but to play the cards you're dealt. And if you're already judging the cards you're dealt or comparing the cards to somebody else's cards, you don't even know the value of those cards because you haven't seen the cards in the middle yet. You're making assumptions on your hand and you don't even know what 5 cards are going to come down. You don't know what's in store for you. So I'm just saying, man, sometimes when life gives you that hand that you're a little skeptical about, that you don't really know why it is you got it, just wait for the flop. Wait for the flop. Maybe you'll see the flop and you'll see something you like. Oh, I got a pair. Everyone else isn't quite betting the way you would think they would. I think I got a pretty nice situation going on here. Hang around to the turn. Hang around on the turn. Like, okay, wait a minute. We're looking good here. And then on the river, you hit like a full house or some shit. You would have never got there if you folded pre-flop because you had already made up your mind about what it is that the life was trying to deal you. So don't be so quick to judge situations when they come to you. Because I often feel like we get dealt situations for a reason. Whether it's some grand life-changing situation, whether it could just be a piece to the larger puzzle that is you. It may not be super consequential, but this one, we'll stay on the poker topic, this one hand you got dealt that you didn't think anything of, maybe in 3 years you'll look back on it and be like, oh shit, that thing altered me just so slightly enough that it diverted my course and it led me here. It taught me a lesson that I'm learning. Now, all these years later, I'm finally understanding the lesson I was taught in that moment. And you would have never known if you just didn't see it through. If you didn't play the hand. If you just gave up and chalked it up as life hates you. I don't think life hates anybody. I think life wants to see us win. Respectfully. I think that if you look at the world through a positive outlook and you look at life as wanting to see you win, as wanting to help you, as wanting to guide you, and it puts situations in front of you that'll help you down your path, you can live a very fulfilled life. I feel like a lot of the times we kind of cower and kind of hide and run from these opportunities that life puts in front of us because we're scared. We don't want to change everything. We don't want to become a new person. We don't want to destroy the comfort zone that we find ourselves in. And that's another thing about life is it wants you to win, but it can't do it for you. I feel like life presents you with opportunities to achieve that personal growth you seek, to guide you down the path that you're meant to go down. But it's up to us to take the action. It'll give you the idea. It'll give you the circumstance. But if you're too scared to act on it, life isn't just going to sit around and be like, okay, well, whenever you're ready. No, it'll just pass it along to the next person. And that's how I look at life. And I feel like if we aren't taking these opportunities when they're presented to us, then we're never going to reap the rewards of whatever it is to live a fulfilled life. Yeah. So be more mindful. Be more mindful of opportunities that you find yourself in. Maybe look at things as less of a coincidence and more of divine intervention. Maybe look at things more like that, and maybe things will start to click. Because I feel like if we chalk things up as coincidences, then it strips it of all spiritual significance. Whereas if we view them as interactions with God, or God laying the path out for us, it'll make us more grateful, but it'll also make us stay in the fight a little bit longer. If you believe that this path you're on is God's plan, is destined for you by the universe, you're more likely to see it through. And you're more likely to continue to stay motivated. You're more likely to see the turn or the river when maybe the flop doesn't play out the way you think it would. And that's how he tied it all back to poker. So yeah, maybe play around with that for yourself. You know, the idea that life is a lot like poker, which is maybe a little thought experiment that you could play with. Kind of helps you just grapple with frustrations in this life and interesting situations that maybe sometimes you question as to why would God do this to me? Why would life put this on my plate? You know, there's always a greater reason. And I mean, sometimes there's not. Sometimes you just get dealt a bullshit hand and you just gotta fold and just wait till the next one. Sometimes you gotta play them through, see what happens. So that's the end of the show today. That's about all I have for the juicy content. I do have, I guess, something I want to talk about here at the end. It's more about like the direction of the show. I wouldn't say it's very content driven. So if that's what you're here for, the juicy content, you know, my take on things, that is the end of the show for you. So I do thank you for listening. I do hope you come back. Please don't forget to rate 5 stars on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, like the video, comment, whatever you got to do to interact with the show. Thank you so much for listening. But for those of you who want to stick around for a little bit, I've been thinking a lot about where I want this show, what I want out of this show. And what I have now, I think, is a pretty good system. You know, I come in here, I record an hour every week, and I feel myself getting more and more confident, more and more comfortable doing this. Like my second episode, I stated in the episode how I was super nervous and I was like having like a mild panic attack before I recorded the show because there was so much pressure on like talking about the right topics and things like this, that, and the third. You know, we're 7 episodes in now, and I feel like I'm a lot more confident on just speaking on things that I care about and just kind of coming in here and talking my shit, being myself to the most that I can. Because if I can't do that, then what's the point in doing this? You know, if I can't come on here for an hour a week and be myself, what am I doing? You know, I'm not trying to put on some facade. I'm not trying to try to act and be some interesting person that I'm not, and talk about things that I want to act like I care about because I feel like people will give a shit more. That's not what I want the foundation of this show to be. I want this show to be a place where I can kind of open up and be a little more vulnerable and talk a little bit more about things that I care about or that I've been thinking about and try to find the audience of people who view life the same way I do it. And kind of build a community of people who just find interest in that, who find things interesting that I do, who think of these introspective things that I think about, and maybe I can be a driver for certain perspective changes in some people, or even just like conversations that maybe people wouldn't have if they didn't watch this show. So that's kind of where I'm at short term. But long term, I've come to the realization that as much as I do really enjoy doing these solo episodes, I want to start interviewing people. Like long term, I eventually want to bring on guests, and I want to have those conversations, like those more in-depth conversations with people. I want to just, talk to people and kind of break down these like egoic walls we put up, and just have really like fucking thoughtful conversations with people that I find cool. There's people that I really like, just like either online or like, whatever it is, in real life even, that I would love to just sit down and talk to. And I feel like if I can build a show and get a big enough following, I can start to kind of attract these more interesting guests that it would just be a dream to like have conversations with these people. But I understand that's a long-term goal, and we got to stay in the fight for quite a while to get to that point. That's a much later down the road goal. But I think we can get there. Like I said, I felt very confident these past 2 episodes, just in what it is I present, and what it is that I, can put out there to people. So we're just gonna keep on keeping on. We're gonna keep on showing up. We're gonna keep on working and keep getting more confident on the microphone and kind of navigate that as we see fit. Like when I do start doing guests, it'll be people I know, so like they're not gonna be like like crazy. Yeah, like I told my fiance Naomi's gonna be the first guest on the show, and then like from there, if that goes well, I might like interview like some friends who I think can like just have like hold a good conversation for 45 minutes to an hour, because that's what excites me, man. It's just being able to have those juicy conversations on the mic, man. Like just thinking about that gave me butterflies. Like that's what this is about. But I know to get there, I need to get confident and comfortable on the microphone first, which is what we're doing. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up. So if you listen to that little monologue there, shout out. You're cool for that. You're my dog. But yeah, to everyone who didn't leave before, like I said, once again, thank you so much for listening. This has been a lot of fun. And I'm glad that, you guys are listening this deep into the show and actually enjoying the content and showing up every week. It means a lot, and it's really special to see that. So thank you guys so much. Like I said last week, you guys are my goats. You're my fucking dogs, my OGs, my hashtag slimes. So I appreciate the hell out of you guys. But that is it for episode number 7. Thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, do not forget to rate 5 stars on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, like the video, comment, go to the socials at The Drew Kennington Show, follow, do whatever you got to do, interact with them, email into the show if you got to take. It's been sick hanging out with you guys for an hour. I'll catch y'all next week. Peace.